Hey guys, before the video begins, I want to let you know that the person I will be interviewing in this video is the awesome Ice Cream Assassin, the creative mind behind Legacy of the Dragonborn, or the Dragonborn Gallery mod. In this interview, I will be discussing Assassin's history with modding, Elder Scrolls, the Legacy mod, a few fun facts about himself, and his upcoming new mod, Odyssey of the Dragonborn, which from what we discuss is a mod that a lot of people should be excited for, especially if they are already huge fans of Legacy. For those of you who are interested and want to support this awesome individual, links to his social medias, discords for his projects, and even his Patreon will all be linked down in the description below. Thank you all for listening, sorry to take up your time, and please, enjoy the video. Hey everybody, it's Infinity coming at you today to bring you a very special video actually. Today I got an actual interview with the mod author behind Legacy of the Dragonborn, Ice Cream Assassin here. And I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting to get this, but he offered to sit down and answer some questions. So the first couple questions are going to be about a bunch of stuff with him, about Legacy, and then I'm going to get a whole bunch of details. I'm going to be asking him about the new mod, hopefully, that's coming out sometime in the future, I'm not entirely sure, called Odyssey of the Dragonborn, which is supposed to be a follow-up, and you'll figure out more about that soon if you're interested, so stick around to the end for that. And I'm just going to jump right in real quick. How you doing, Ice Cream?
Yeah, doing great. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Never really done an interview before, but it's pretty exciting. I was looking forward to this for a while after you offered.
Yeah, it's always fun to sit down and chat about the projects.
So it's been like, forgive me, I'm bad at talking. I'll just say, I'm like, oh, here we go. This is what happens when I don't have a script.
That's right.
So, I'm just going to jump right in real quick. I have a bunch of questions here. I listed them out. There's like 16, 15 of them. And the first half are about you, and they are about Legacy of the Dragonborn and your experiences with modding and stuff. Just some stuff people might want to know. And then the second half will just be purely about Odyssey. So I'm going to ask you the first one, which is a relatively silly one. It's just kind of want to know why the name Ice Cream Assassin.
Well, I used to own 2 Baskin-Robbins ice cream stores, actually. So that was part of it. And also, during that period of time, I was going through a bit of a Tori Amos music kick. And one of her lines refers to selling your soul to the ice cream assassin. And just kind of stuck situationally.
It's actually really cool. I was honestly like thinking like, oh, it's probably just some random thing, but I knew it. I knew there was a story behind. That's really cool, actually.
That's right. And then later irony throws on top of it that I have recently become diabetic, and so there's a little irony in there.
Oh wow, that got very dark real fast. I'm so sorry.
It's not a big deal. It's something I expected, and it's managed well. So
Well, as long as you're on top of it, that's good.
Yep.
So yeah.
Just,
sorry, I'm going to cut you off by accident a bunch.
No worries. It was amusing, shall we say, at least.
Oh yeah, no, I probably would make a bunch of jokes about it too if I were in your shoes. That's just how a lot of people are.
Yep.
Alright, so that was the first question. Pretty simple. So the second one is, how long have you been modding for?
Since Doom, the original back in the 90s.
Oh wow.
That was kind of my first foray into building custom content for games with custom sound packages and custom levels and some rebuilt sprites for the different enemies and that type of thing. And I didn't really hit really seriously into modding until Oblivion, but I did a little bit of tinkering in a few different games between then and now.
I was about to say, because I know I told you I do a podcast. It's called like Let's Talk, and I mentioned your name, and I currently know a friend who's also mods, and he also has been a part of the modding community for a while, and he mentioned you as though like you were one of the like OG modders for Skyrim, which is pretty cool. So I know you've at least been doing this for like 7 years since Skyrim came out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually I tend to be kind of a late adopter to anything, and so basically I got involved with Skyrim about a year after it came out, and then I got into modding about a year after the creation kit was released, and yeah, so I mean I've been doing it for probably about 6 years now.
Hmm. So you started with Doom, which is back in the 90s, which,
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken, that means you've been modding longer than I've been alive, which is pretty crazy. um, and
Yep.
wow,
One game
like,
or another.
speaking of, like, because you said Oblivion, like, how is it? I'm assuming, because I can never mod Oblivion, every time I do it crashes. I'm assuming Skyrim's a whole lot easier to work with than Oblivion, obviously.
They definitely both have their pros and cons. As far as stability goes, I think Skyrim's a little bit more versatile, especially with Special Edition, having all the different engine improvements, and the creation kit is a lot better now that Nukem has released his CK fixes a while back, and we've been kind of working close hand in hand with him to report bugs and help him fix stuff, and that's been a real treat compared to the official version that I affectionately refer to as the crash kit, and even made myself a little custom avatar icon that mimics a video game achievement: 5,000 crashes unlocked.
Oh wow, that's actually funny and very true. As someone who mods the heck out of their game to do reviews half the time, I can definitely confirm that Special Edition must be a whole lot smoother than the original, as you say, crash version, crash kit.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I've been doing this for a while. So definitely, to answer that question, at least 20, 25 years, you'd say.
Yeah, I didn't really get too heavily into it to where it became kind of a pseudo profession until about Oblivion. That was kind of my first, larger flagship mod back then was Imperial Bank of Cyrodiil.
Oh, I think I've actually used that. I love that mod.
Yeah, I never got around to completely debugging it near the end of the main quest of it, but most of it works pretty well, and I was pretty happy with it.
Just having a banking system like reminiscent of Daggerfall was pretty cool, in my opinion,
Hmm.
at least.
Yeah, having that, and then all of the extra real estate you could get at each of the major towns, and each different piece of property had its own backstory and its own little quest you could have for it, and
Huh.
so it was a neat little package.
I will definitely have to figure out how to mod Oblivion properly and revisit that since I know you did it. Alright, so moving on to the next one. Number 3 is, how often do you just play Skyrim, if ever? And what kind of mods do you enjoy just in your game?
I tend to mod Skyrim more than I play Skyrim. I'll go through, stints where I won't play for 6 months at a time, and I'll be, working on modding and stuff. I just recently started up a new playthrough a few weeks ago before my big move, and that was actually the first time I've really done a full conflict resolution adjustment to my load order and making sure everything was cleaned up and patched properly. But as far as content goes, I tend to be pretty heavy into new world mods, new land mods or quest mods, um, unique artifact mods, of course. Anything that basically Legacy has support for, anything I found interesting, I set up support for, and built quest displays and item displays for those mods. I'm definitely not a follower aficionado. I'm kind of infamous amongst some of the people in my community as being decidedly anti-follower, so I don't tend to run much stuff pertaining to that. Um, but yeah, I mean, mostly collectibles, mostly different quests and new lands. Those are kind of the big things I like, running around and exploring, new and alien environments, which is, why moving forward into our next big project is going to be extra exciting for me.
Hmm. Yeah, I know that's kind of the stuff I like to install, which is why Legacy obviously is a big thing why I enjoy. Just the whole idea of adding stuff into your game and then going on these new worlds is like pretty interesting. So I completely understand where you're coming from there.
Yeah, it just kind of gives a different feel, especially with as old as Skyrim is. It's nice to have something new to look at and something new to experience.
Oh yeah, exactly.
A
I
lot less predictability.
I kind of find it funny because it was like that's basically what I was expecting. Is I'm like, he made Legacy. I'm sure he enjoys what he basically made.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah,
just adds
that
up.
tends to be kind of the golden rule of modding is to make stuff you like and then share it with others, and you might find like-minded people. It's a
Hmm.
lot less about catering to what you think people want and more about just representing the thing that you like the most and taking a few recommendations and requests and ideas people throw your way and overall making it bigger and better.
I know like Legacy is definitely like I can only imagine because I played the original Legendary Edition version like I think it was a year or so ago back when I first got a computer because it was one of the recommended ones.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the first mods I ever installed. Never really got into the full potential of it until about like 3 months ago because I was always like, oh, that's cool, this is a gallery. And then I realized how it worked, and then I was blown away eventually when I finally went to the Solitude and figured it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a lot more to it once you get past the billboard of what it represents itself as initially.
Just like seeing it evolve though is kind of cool because I went from the old version to the special edition, which is like boom, holy crap, this place is huge, you know.
Yeah, well, we went through a huge remodeling between version 4 on special edition and version 5, where we basically built everything again from the ground up. We completely overhauled the systems. I built from scratch about 120 separate meshes, architectural meshes for the architecture of the museum interior and exterior, and basically completely rebuilt everything. And then we stripped back a bunch of the quests and re-optimized them and did some recasting for several of the NPCs to get better quality voice acting and voice files. And it basically took about a year, and we got it all done. And it's pretty impressive, and I'm pretty happy with the results that we came up with.
Oh
There's
yeah, no,
definitely
like it's definitely looks better. I was getting sweeping shots for the video I made not that long ago, and I saw like the outside of the museum looking down on it, and I was like, wow, that is a really big building. That is actually really like it fits perfectly into Solitude, which is really cool.
Yeah, I get a few left field complaints about people saying, oh, well, it's bigger than the Blue Palace. That doesn't seem right. And it's like, well, where else are you gonna, put all of this stuff?
To
Because
say
they
it
kind
fits
of,
like almost all of the artifacts in
yeah,
Skyrim in it. It's gonna
because
be big.
one of my pet peeves and several people's pet peeves about previous versions under the old design was that it was a bit of TARDIS syndrome, where
Uh,
the inside was bigger than the outside, and that's a universal rule. I mean, all interiors are 20% larger on the inside than they are of the exterior buildings. Um, but this was ridiculous. The inside of the museum was 3 or 4 times larger than what made sense, and so that was kind of one of my main design goals, was to create a footprint of the museum that made more sense for the actual museum layout and interior speaking.
yeah, I was about to say that was the other thing I noticed because when I went up and got the bird's eye view of the building, I did notice I was like, oh, the big dome is the center, and then it branches out to the left, and then there's the houses or whatever to the right, and I'm like, yeah, that makes actually, yeah, like the layout made more sense as I looked at the old version compared to the new version.
Yeah, the old version definitely all through the beginning. It started out as just this tiny little gallery that used that central solitude prison cell tile set parts to just kind of hold the unique vanilla items, and that's kind of where it started. And it's really been evolving, over the years, and that's kind of one of the main catalysts for the version 5 revision that we did, was to kind of get away from the piecemeal effect that inevitably happened, because we couldn't really pre-plan how things were going to expand, because it just kind of evolved naturally on its own. But it looked like we had built additions wherever we could shove them. And so with the new version, having a deliberate design layout has really improved things a lot.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I know. I definitely can see the how do I put it? The change, or is it the improvement? I don't know why I had a brain fart there. Sorry. But yeah, I could definitely see the improvement, like overall, from version 4 to version 5, because I didn't update my version, and then when I updated the version, saw there was a new one. I noticed the new building, and I was like, huh, this is better. And I'm like, this is really good. I'm like, this is cool. So yeah,
Yeah,
you've
it was
definitely outdone
kind of fun.
yourself.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm happy with the result.
I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that. So moving on, because we've been stuck on question 3. I just realized as I look over at question 4. Um, Number 4 was, I think you kind of answered this, but I would like to see more interest in, like, what was your first modding project? And you already answered that it wasn't Legacy, it was actually Doom, you said.
Yeah, I pretty much started just with level designs with Doom, and back in that era, all of the design engines for things had very limited capacity in the scope of what you could build. I even fiddled around with some text-based, story uh, RPG, kind of games, and those ended up maxing out. My brain was bigger than its engine capacity, so I always planned too much and basically broke these tools.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't really until Oblivion that really I got into an engine that had more than enough capability to facilitate the various ideas I wanted to put down. But really, yeah, that Imperial Bank of Cyrodiil mod was kind of my first major uh, endeavor to go into, full force modding that I was releasing to the public. Um, and it was basically a lot of reverse engineering, just kind of seeing how people put stuff together and getting other people to write little portions of script for me, and then kind of digesting how it all worked, and eventually kind of putting things together. And even in Oblivion era, I wasn't writing a lot of scripts from scratch. It was mostly taking stuff that people have provided for me and kind of hacking it apart and patching things back together again, and making them work that way. It
Huh.
wasn't really until Skyrim that I really delved neck deep into actually scripting things from the ground up.
I just say scripting, and like people don't realize it when it goes into a mod. And I had to take this mentality when I started reviewing them, because I reviewed a lot of good ones. I reviewed a lot of ones, but I always try to look at it as, like, no matter what it is, a lot of work has gone into it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a large prospect to get involved with for sure. There's a lot of moving pieces.
Hmm. That's why I can only imagine, like, there's a bunch of other ones. Like Legacy is a huge one because it has the quests, it has the only not even that, like the building itself has, like, God knows how much work put into it at this point, between the scripting and like the placing of the models, because those things are removable, which is awesome. You just put a mask down, or you can pick it back up, and it will stay in a specific place, which is really cool.
Yeah, that was one of my scripting achievements, was creating a actual dynamic Havoc script, because the built-in disabling of Havoc Settle that prevents stuff from just falling off of walls that's built into vanilla is totally inadequate and doesn't really work most of the time. And if you're on a potato of a PC, it's not gonna run those scripts properly before the 3D is fully loaded and havocing all over the place. So I finally, over time, developed a little script that works to make sure that things stay nailed down, and if they don't, then it makes sure to put them back where they belong.
I
So
know,
that's
like,
been a big plus, especially in special edition has been nice, because we can actually facilitate using that script on a lot more items than you could under LE. LE, if you used it too many, you would kind of overload the engine, and it wouldn't be able to load up all the scripts in time, and things would be still falling all over the place.
oof. I have never made it that far in the original version. Maybe it's a good thing I didn't, because I don't know. Actually, my
Yeah,
computer could probably have handled it, but I'm worried about the engine itself freaking out at that point.
yeah. Over time, we figured out, was around version 8 that we realized that there would be problems if we attached it to everything, and we did a bunch of redesigns over time, and eventually we found a version of the script that we made, and a balance that worked well for it. So it is stable.
Huh. I was gonna say it is fascinating to see like because like people don't think about it, but I saw that and I was like, how much work has gone into just putting this sword up on the rack? Because I'm like
Yeah.
that the
Well, yeah.
axes, the masks, like holy shit.
Well, one of my co-developers who joined onto the Legacy team. I mean, I started this out just as a one-man show, and various members of the community eventually reached out as it kind of gained in popularity and volunteered to help out with a variety of things. And my right-hand man, Pickysaurus, who also works at Nexus now, um, he's done a lot of rebuilding of the script systems. We always joke that I'm like the mad scientist tinkering all these different ideas together, and he's the one who makes sure that they all work. And so he basically redesigned the sorting system for the museum. There was always a prep station system where you could activate it and it would find the items in your inventory that could be displayed and it would put them up. And he just redesigned the system so that we could integrate it better with our various patches for supporting other mods, so that they could just patch right in and connect to the system without actually having to alter it. Just a lot of peculiarities. Like with modding, there's what we call the rule of one, which is only one mod can alter any one given record in the entire game. So if you have like 3 mods in a row that are editing the same sword, it'll, the last thing in the load order is the one that's going to get to actually do what it does. So there's a lot of conflict resolution that have to be, done normally where you create patches. And we've done a lot of design work to ensure that basically our scripts dynamically set those things up so that there's a little less, individual case by case patching, and nobody has to actually edit any of the base records in Legacy itself.
I know like that's another thing I really wanted to like mention, but I don't think it turned it into a question. Is that like it's pretty incredible that your mod not only is its own mod in and of itself, but also works with like 40 other mods at least if you want it to, which is cool.
Yeah, we've got well over 100 patches in our patch fo mod, and yeah, I would say that we're kind of right around that 40 to 45 maybe that actually have set display, assigned display space in the museum. We actually built a whole software developer's kit that has a guide, and it goes through step by step with pictures and everything on how to set up your mod to have display space in the museum. And we've got a whole chart of locations and designated spots that we basically, quote unquote, lease out to people. We assign them a specific space, and that way we know that there's going to be universal compatibility with all of those various supported mods that we've given an assigned space to.
I love that. I like you couldn't see it, but as soon as you said like we lease out spots, I started laughing because like it's like a real museum. It's really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Well,
yeah. In fact, one of our future galleries, which is going to be for all of the Odyssey display space areas, is commemorated to the first high level Patreon supporter that I got, and it's going to be memorialized as the so and so memorial gallery.
oh, that's really nice actually.
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, like that's kind of the whole story with the explorer relics, is that each one of them was kind of a dedication to various people who did various things throughout the process of Legacy's growth and development.
Yeah, I got into those. I think I collected a bunch of them, and I was like, man, who are these from? And I researched it, and I was like, that's really
Yeah.
cool. I like that. From the cape and
Yeah.
like the sextant to like there was a couple other things. There was the archaeological tool set, and I was like, these are really interesting things that add unique abilities, and they're based
Yeah,
off just real
that's something I'm
people.
always big on. That's something I always enjoy, is neat things that do interesting and unique functions.
That's actually
Not
really
just
cool.
your generic item with generic enchantment. Something that actually ties in with everything and gives you some neat things to do.
something you might actually use, and therefore you'll
Yeah.
find real value in, instead of like a generic enchanted ring number 7. Let me throw that in my chest real quick. Or on
Yeah,
the display in
exactly.
the museum and never touch it.
Yep.
Love that. Well, real quick, moving forward, can't get caught up in too many questions. Number 5 I have here is, what gave you the idea to do Legacy of the Dragonborn, and what pushed you to make it in the first place, really?
I had been playing for a while and started using mods, about a year after modding had become a thing, and downloaded Elysium Estate, a player home, and it had a display room down in the basement with some mannequins and some different places you could put the unique items, but they didn't. It was just basically these kind of countertops that you could put a variety of things on, but it wasn't very clear where exactly you had to click in order to put them on. And I thought, oh, I could do something a little better that has like actual marked places. And so I started kind of tinkering with it to see if I could make myself a patch that would edit things and add some elements that I wanted in there. And then I just decided from there, after a little bit of frustration and not knowing what I was doing, I kind of delved in and was like, I'll just make my own little museum and stick it up over here. There's nothing here right now. So that's pretty much where it began. I just wanted a place to put all the unique items from the vanilla game, and it just kind of spiraled out of control from there.
Before I knew it, I had installed other mods into my game and put them as part of my mod.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
actually really cool. I love that story as well. Because the idea of you just installed a mod and then you're like, well, guess I have to make my own extremely popular mod, or should I say mod that will be extremely popular in 10 years.
Yeah, I had no concept or delusion that this was going to get to this level. Honestly, it's pretty crazy, the level of support that I've got in my community and the number of people who have stepped up and joined my team and taken a bunch of workload off of me, and so that I can help kind of direct and steer things a little more than actually doing. So that's been a big shift.
Well, sometimes you open a door and you discover a whole new room or a whole new building. You never know.
Yep, exactly.
So moving on from that one, I like that answer though to that question. We were doing Legacy, so that's 5. We're on 6, which is, how much time do you think you've sunk into just making Legacy and its components over the years? Like, of your
Well,
own personal time, I should say.
If the Steam time indicator is not lying, I've spent about 24,000 hours.
Holy crap, that's amazing.
But admittedly, I had spent a lot of time with the creation kit just running in the background, because once you have it running stably, you don't want to poke it.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point,
so,
actually.
and a lot of time I'm also working on models or working through other utilities and whatnot. So I'd say definitely well over 15,000 hours.
Jeez, I had to like calculate that. There's 24 hours in a day.
It's like 3 years, I think.
Yeah, I'm about to say, all
Like,
I know for sure is that is a lot of time.
yeah,
That's way more than I think I've only put over the course of like the last 9 years of my life. I think I've only played Skyrim over all the different consoles for maybe 4,000 hours, maybe 5 at most, being generous. And you have easily tripled that by just actually doing real work in the game itself, and that's actually pretty incredible.
yeah, it's definitely become a passion and a obsession at sometimes.
That's like it's good. It shows that you're dedicated, and that's really cool. So
Yeah, I've basically made it it's more or less a half to full time gig doing it.
hey man, if you make something awesome out of it, then you might as well make it your job, especially if you're making the money and putting real time into it.
Yep, indeed. Do something you like.
So, moving on to question number 7. How much research have you done into the deep lore just for this mod, and more specifically, how many headaches have you gotten from trying to decipher it all? This is something I really want to know, because I have to research this stuff too, and it
Yes,
kills me.
it's something for sure. I rely a lot on UESP's website.
Same. They're really
and
awesome. I love that
also
website.
the Imperial Library. Those are kind of my two go-tos. And Imperial Library is really awesome because it has a lot of obscure, varied lore
Oh, I
and a
know.
lot and a lot of developed articles. I mean, like we've got a ton of bookmarks for Odyssey for various things. Somebody did a whole series of articles that basically break down the language structure of various language forms in Elder Scrolls.
Oh,
So
wow.
you actually have some good, translations and some good formula for how to actually construct, additional terms that would translate properly. And it's, kind of to an obsessive level, but yeah, I mean, I do quite a bit of reading and a lot of discussion with our various team members of how things are going to fit in and how they wedge together. And I've actually been really surprised with how Legacy's story has kind of developed on its own and how it's actually connected up with things in ways that make complete sense. At least to me. We did some major revisions to some of the main storyline elements that fixed a few of the less stable connections. And but yeah, it definitely can be headache inducing.
Yeah, it is. Because it's like
It's
trying
like,
to wrap your head around 20 different concepts.
yes, it's like reading the 36 lessons of Vivek while drunk.
Yes, I was gonna point that out. I was like, Arlen says that. I think like a couple weeks ago found that line after doing the quest where you get all the armor pieces, like Tiber Septim's armor and the Wufarth like greaves and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there. I think he says it is like, it's like trying to decipher the 36 lessons of Vivek drunk, and I absolutely loved the character's response. Like, wouldn't that make them more comprehensive? And I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty good point.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love
so
that. Like,
and a lot of humor really evolves just kind of naturally. Several of the characters in Legacy have really just kind of taken on their own life, and the voice actors for them have really owned those characters. It's not just a work for hire kind of thing. The voice actor Will Hanford, who does Arian and Madras, really has some solid ownership of the character and really grasps them fully, which is awesome.
and speaking of voice actors, I know, and I wanted to point this out at some point in this interview. Speaking of that quest where you go on and get all the pieces to rebuild the amulet, I I heard you were the voice of Ysmir Wolfarth.
Yes, I actually did quite a bit of the voice acting in Legacy once upon a time, but version 5 I stripped back some of it because we had some technical issues that corrupted a bunch of the audio files, and the quality was really bad, and I wasn't in a situation where I could get good recordings from myself again, and didn't really want to do it, so we just found some other people that fit the roles. But there's a few roles that I still have in the various components.
I know, like, I just love the way, like, because it was, all I'm going to say is you did a very good job with definitely Ysmir, because that was probably one of the few times I've heard voice acting in a mod can, like, relate it to an actual character from lore, and that's exactly how I imagined they'd sound, and you did a very good job with it, is all I want to
Nice.
say.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Definitely one of my favorite sequences, as that's one of my favorite characters, honestly. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's an interesting character. We've done a lot of research in him because it connects up to a lot of things.
Yeah, with the Arctan Heresy and Tiber,
Mhm.
and then before that, there's like the stories of Red Mountain and the Ashen King, and yeah,
Yep,
there's like a bunch of
exactly.
stuff.
The man of many titles,
Oh yeah,
as
that's
I like
why
to
that's why I
say.
love it. Where he's just like, I've done enough. Let me let me sleep. Like, yeah, I know. Please, I'm sorry.
Yes, even Ariane gets exasperated going over all the different titles Wolfarth has.
Exactly. I remember that. That's what I love about the mod. Also, is how much dedication you have to the lore. But yeah, not to get too far onto that, let's ask you the last question from this first part before we start talking about Odyssey, which is something I really want to talk about too with you, because that's something I'm really looking forward to. The last question I have for you is, from your knowledge, how has the mod evolved since its initial release back in, well, whenever you released it? And are you satisfied with how the mod has played out so far?
Definitely. It basically, like I mentioned before, just evolved from a simple one-person project to have display space for my own use, and figured I'd go ahead and share it too, to being a massive, 4 gigabyte unpacked package that has, a dozen different people behind me helping support it and helping to debug and, rework and all of that. I mean, I've got, Suggesto who does all of the patch work and maintains the patch page and does all that support, and JCBQ that does a ton of support on the patches, as well as moderation on the Discord community, and Picky who's helped me rebuild, and reprogram tons of it, and he's kind of been the spearhead for SE edition, because back when SE first came out and we decided to start porting it, I basically handed it over to him to kind of take care of. So he basically serviced that entirely on his own for about a year before I finally decided to cut ties with LE and transition over myself. And yeah, and there's the half a dozen other people who have helped out with various things from testing and helped to wrangle, or herd cats as I refer to it,
Herd
when
cats.
it comes to trying to organize play testers and get good results from everything.
Hmm.
You know, tons and tons of people have come on to really make it a huge group effort, more than I ever would have anticipated.
I'm about to say, like, it sounds like something, like you said, it's amazing. You just made a mod basically for your own purposes. You released it as like, oh, people can have it, and it just kind of kept going. It's like that Energizer Bunny where you just, before you know it, it's down the road and you're like, oh crap.
Yeah,
It's
well,
turned
I
into
mean,
something way bigger.
it's perfect example. You can see that I had no concept of where this was going. Is that there were probably 4 or 5 different iterations along the road that I deemed as final, and then just ended up coming back and redoing something and adding a ton more features and content to it, and it just kept going.
One of the natures of the artist is never being satisfied, which is a good thing at the end of the day.
Exactly. Exactly. We're our own worst critics.
Exactly. I'll make a video and I'll spend an extra week on it because I'm just not happy with it. I'm like,
Yeah.
nope, gotta go back, gotta re-record this one line because it does not sound right. But yeah, no, like that makes sense. Like hearing like that from Legacy, like you answered a lot of questions I had suspicions of, but I wasn't sure, and like it definitely just makes a lot of sense when you say them, because I'm like, yeah, that definitely adds up.
Mhm.
So since we just talked about Legacy, Legacy, everybody who obviously is watching this interview up to this point knows what Legacy is. If you don't know, or you do know, and this is the whole reason you clicked it, there is a new, I don't want to say new mod, I don't know if it's an add-on or not, and that's one of the questions I'm going to ask you. We're going to get into exactly what it is, but it's called Odyssey of the Dragonborn. It's supposed to be sort of like a follow-up sort of mod, and I love the premise of it, where from what I've researched, we're supposed to be following the story of Legacy and basically going to other places in Tamriel, which is really cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's a sequel basically. Picks up at the end of Legacy's main storyline and the Explorers Guild storyline, and basically progresses out from there. It takes you to a variety of different provinces across Tamriel, and also other realms beyond.
Ooh, like Oblivion, and then there's obviously like Lig or something too, maybe, and other stuff.
Different, all kinds of different places. And yeah, so basically, it's a huge expansion. It's going to be released in 8 separate parts. The first act has been mind-bogglingly huge of a endeavor to develop, because it's a completely new island archipelago that takes place in Balfiera, where the Adamantine Tower is.
Oh, so Daggerfall. Not Daggerfall,
Yeah.
High Rock, sorry.
Yeah, with the Iliac Bay, kind of right between High Rock and Hammerfell.
I know, like,
And,
the Adamantine Tower, the Crystal Tower, that is in Daggerfall, which is the second game.
Yeah, and so basically that world space is about the size of Solstheim.
Yeah,
and
sounds about
so
right.
we've been working on that for better part of over a year now,
Hmm.
and have a pretty large team behind various areas, and it's going along pretty swimmingly at this point. We had a major hiatus because of COVID, and
Oh yeah,
everybody
no, that's understandable
just couldn't
entirely.
keep our heads wrapped around things. But within the next couple of weeks, we're going to be jumping back in and turning the engine back on.
Hmm. Well, real quick, let's actually answer the not let's not actually answer questions. I don't want to sound like a well. Let's actually stop talking about that. Sorry, I don't want to
That's
sound like
right.
that.
Well, we'll
Um,
consider that the introduction, and now
yeah,
you can get to your questions.
I was like, oh wait, I think we're answering questions. I've written down. Like I realized that I'm like I'm gonna have to
That's right.
re-edit these questions. But
We're
yeah,
taking the read your mind approach of answering questions
it's like I
before they're
already knew you were
asked.
gonna ask this. So let me just answer them all right now. Well, the first one is you kind of answered what it is basically, but what exactly is Odyssey and what is it compared to Legacy? Is it a completely independent mod or is it an add-on made to work alongside it? You kind of answered that earlier. From what I understand, it's
Yep,
you have to
it's a
beat
sequel.
Legacy before you can move on to Odyssey. From what I understand.
Yep, it'll be dependent on Legacy. You have to have Legacy installed and have played through everything before it'll fire up and do its thing. Yeah,
That's good.
so it's basically a continuation.
I was to say it'd be kind of like it's one less mod for me to worry about when I load up and it's like quest added, quest added, quest added. I'm like, oh great, gotta add
Yeah,
Odyssey to that real quick.
yeah. The real difficulty with it is going to be on the technical end of it, because most of these things are going to be pretty heavy duty, and we're going to probably end up having to run most of them as ESMs, and so installing them mid game, you know, to where you run through everything, do all of Act One, and then later Act Two is released, putting that in, and then playing through it, and so on, is going to be technically a difficult thing to do, because Skyrim's not very stable when it comes
No,
to
it's
adding stuff mid
definitely
game.
not.
So I think we're going to have quite a bit of grumbling from people who are going to have to periodically restart their game throughout the course of these episodes as they're released. So that's the one hurdle I'm not looking forward to for sure.
Oh yeah, no. I remember for a fact, even I got frustrated, and this kind of going back to Legacy for just a second. I remember with Legacy, the latest version, version 5, I remember you specifically said in the file you have to restart your game. Like you will not be able to play your previous save game. And I don't know if I did it intentionally, but I remember loading a character from like that I saved right after the introductory sequence to kind of skip a lot of the introductory sequence. And then
Uh-huh.
there's just Arlen or Aren or whatever how you pronounce it, just cutting in like, I told you you need to restart your
Yes.
game.
I'm so incredibly disappointed, my
And
friend.
I'm like, oh god, that
You were
scared me
asked to
so
start a
much.
new game.
And it made me exit out, and I was sitting there like, oh wow, that's actually really smart programming. It kind of
Yeah,
frustrated me in the moment. I was like, god damn it, because I heard that message at least 7 times in the
yeah,
course of trying to start a new game.
yeah,
But eventually
exactly.
I got it good, so it didn't
Yeah,
matter.
and those kind of things are just they're in there to save people from themselves, just
Yeah.
because there's nothing that can be done in those instances where you have to reset. It's not, because we get off on people, having to restart their characters.
Oh no,
It's
trust
just
me.
it's just all engine limitation stuff, and the way Skyrim saves and bakes stuff into your save. There's just no avoiding it when you do major revisions like we did with version 5 for sure. So we had to put a fail safe in for that.
No, that makes sense. It reminds me of like if I were to put into an analogy, it's basically stopping the dog when you see it randomly eating something. It's like the dog's like, this is food, and you're just like, no, please, I'm trying to help you.
Yep. Think of it as our invisible electric fence.
Exactly. Just trying to prevent more issues from cropping up.
Yep.
That makes sense. So, real quick to move on. Um oh wait, actually there is something I want to ask based off that. And that is the idea that apparently you you're hoping that you won't have to restart your game every single installment, each act of Odyssey that's going to be released.
Right. Yeah, it's our hope. They are going to be at least the first act is going to be an ESM, because it's going to be kind of a master package that has a lot of assets and resources and elements that are going to be referred to in all of the other future acts. But our hope is to be able to release future episodes as ESP files, so you can at least just tack it onto the end of your load order, and it shouldn't interfere with things too much.
Yeah, so the first installation of Odyssey, you will most definitely have to restart your game, though.
In theory, yeah. I mean, we've been waffling back and forth with it. Since it is an ESM, it is going to shift everything in your load order up one index, and the game is not very good at adapting to that kind of a shift.
Yeah,
So
previously
we have been telling people, that it would be able to be added on mid game. But as we've been going along, I'm thinking more and more that we're probably going to have the recommendation to start over.
Oh yeah, that's fine. That's pretty understandable.
Yeah, but there's going to be enough content in Odyssey that I think a lot of people will play through the Explorers Guild and the Shattered Legacy stuff, and we may offer basically like a quick set option that will basically give you a raw level up to level 50, which is where the start is going to basically be leveled for. And then complete all the required elements that you need to, and then allow you to basically, set up your character the way you want, and then move forward from there. So it's kind of basically a skip ahead option we might offer.
I know, like, there's already a couple quests. If I'm not mistaken, the Night at the Museum one does have, like, the option where you could just tell the dude to deal with it, and you'll come back tomorrow, and the quest's just done.
Yep. Yeah,
Which is awesome. I really like that option, even though I will always play through it, because it's a really funny quest, in my opinion. Really interesting quest.
Mm-hmm.
That one scared the crap out of me first time I played it. Like, I remembered, like, man, where do I have to go? And then, like, a random object flew off the wall and smacked my character, and I'm like, ah! I freaked out. I was like, how? How did that even happen? I forgot about it happening in the Molag Ball quest, so I didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah.
I was sitting there like, did they just program that to scare the shit out of me?
Yeah, there's quite a few things like that. Little eerie jump scares and all kinds of things. But yeah, we definitely wanted to make it more we always had an option that you could set a global variable with the console, or through the MCM you could disable the haunted quest from happening at all, because some people don't deal well with that stuff. So but we wanted to make a more immersive option, and I think it ended up working out really well.
I really like that one. I know, like, the first couple times I'll be like close to being over and coming. I'm like, I just gotta drop off these swords, just gotta drop off these claws I found. And then it's like, oh, museum's locked. Oh, the quest has started. I gotta do this now.
Yeah. It's like, nope, I don't do ghosts. You deal it.
I don't do ghosts. You do. I love that. That's a good dialogue option.
I'll go get a meat at the Winking Skeever, and you take care of that.
Oh, I love it. I love how the museums are across the hall from, I believe it was Proudspire Manor.
Yeah.
I love that, because I'll go from my house, and I have like a mark and recall spell, so I'll just mark my house and then I'll recall to that, which will save me time in the real game, because I have like a doomsday timer thing for Alduin and all that. So I'll just go there, and then I'll just go to the museum, and I'll be like, yeah, it's right across the street from my house. It's nice. Which is funny, because like the museum also dubs as a home as well, which is a really awesome home if you know.
Yeah, very, very feature rich.
One of the few things I think I really loved about it was I was one of the people who always went into the cellar, and I have the alcohol mod, I think, where it like adds in all the different alcohols, like gold label wine and dark label wine and Emperor's Choice wine and the interesting meads. Yeah. And I remembered stacking up all of the alcohol into the cellar stuff, the alcohol storage. And then I walked into my house and I saw all the alcohol that was displayed, and I was like, this is awesome. Like that, and the food and all that stuff. And I was like, this is awesome. There's actually like displays that will shift.
Yeah, and they also are also can be interacted with to pull one from the container when you click on them on the displays. So, and it'll stay displayed as long as there's a quantity in storage. It's one of the functions that I kind of appropriated from Druid's Den when I took over taking care of servicing that mod for a while. And found that to be a really cool feature.
I love like the cheese mod, which is funny because like I love like that just as a concept. There's 1,000 cheeses in Skyrim now. And I was like, where do I put these? I kept putting them in
Yeah.
the chest in the basement, like, because I'm like, I don't know where else to put these cheese. They weigh so much. And then I saw the cheese cellar storage, and I'm like, the cheese aging room or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah,
oh, you could put them
that
in
was
here.
that was kind of a midnight just for funsies whim that I did. People will do that. They'll want something, and most of the time I'm like, no, I don't have time. Go away. And but every now and then I'll be in the mood, and I'll be like, yeah, I'll make that happen.
I'll
And
make
then,
cheese storage a thing.
next day, and there it is.
That's
Yeah,
actually really cool. I like hearing that. That's kind of nice.
yeah,
So moving on to the next question, because we got like what 6 or 7 left. Yeah, about 6
sure.
left. The second one is, what can you tell us? What are you willing to divulge about the story of Odyssey itself? Because I know it's probably under wraps right now.
Yeah.
But
There's a lot of points that are actually floating around there. If you follow there's an Odyssey, the Dragonborn developer server that is a spoiler warning for most of it, and there's a lot of points people can dig into if they do want to know more about it. Otherwise, I do try and stay somewhat tight-lipped about what's happening with it, but the general principle is that you're essentially going to be called, to do your hero thing, and it evolves to kind of tell a lot of Arian's backstory,
ooh,
and so he becomes basically your partner in crime throughout most of Odyssey, and so there's going to be a lot of development there. People from his past brought into it. Um, in a lot of ways, it'll be the fight against the Thalmor that should have happened and never did, um, and then delves into a lot more deeper lore concerning your destiny as the Dragonborn. Because if you look at the Dragonborn prophecy, it talks about how the wheel turns upon the last Dragonborn,
yeah,
and that the destruction of Alduin is not your end true uh, your true destiny, because the end of the existence, the end of the Kalpa, this current iteration of this timeline, is really what is the end uh, result of what is the destiny of the Dragonborn, because that wheel only fully turns once that is done. Essentially, we essentially reset the entire concept of the timeline, and things progress. But essentially, it delves into kind of the duplicit nature of Akatosh and Lorcan, kind of their interconnectivity, and how that pertains to uh, the Amulet of Kings, the Kim-Adabal gem, and
yeah.
its origin, and delves a lot into tower lore, and it's a lot more metaphysical than I had even initially intended to delve into, but it has definitely evolved and expanded, and gives the player a lot of options. There's going to be multiple ending options, multiple paths you can take throughout the whole series. A lot of the side quests are going to actually be time sensitive, so once you know break past a certain point, the quest may no longer be available to you, but it may actually cause permanent changes to the nature of the world around you. And it's going to be a lot more kind of open ended and free form, to where it isn't about the player just a la carte choosing what to do when. The world does not wait for the hero, is kind of our mantra. And so the player gets to be there and decide what their role is going to be in changing events that happen. And so that may well be not being involved at all, and it may well be steering it one way or the other. So we just give the player a lot more choice in how those outcomes come to be.
Gonna be a lot of saving, a lot of loading, a lot of
Yes.
seeing the outcomes, a lot of being like, oh crap, I want the other one, and then
Yeah.
realizing. you might
Exactly.
not.
Save, save, save. Unless you plan on doing a couple of different playthroughs of Odyssey during its development, I would say make sure you save at various obvious, crossroads of the story, just so that you can check out all the best options.
I have a notorious habit of saving so hard that I get into infinite loading screens, which is a result of literally having over almost 1,000 saves at once.
Yeah.
So I can only tell that I'm going to have to be very meticulous on which saves I delete to make space for my Skyrim now.
For sure.
But yeah, that's actually really cool. I know, I love that concept of the idea of because most people in TES communities, any fandom can be pretty toxic. Everybody makes fun of Skyrim as like the less Elder Scrolls of Elder Scrolls games, but honestly, like, I think it's probably one of the more interesting ones if you put it under a microscope, because the Dragonborn is one of the more interesting protagonists I think you've played as, besides the Nerevarine. Every protagonist is interesting in their own right. It's just that the first two weren't that, like they didn't have many details to them. But the Dragonborn's a literal Dragonborn, and he has the fate of time in his hands, and people don't realize that, because he stops literal Alduin and the end of the world in the most metaphysical way possible by defeating a dragon god. And even though Bethesda could have done a better job with that, in my opinion, I really like how you and a lot of your team are fleshing out this story to make it feel like one of those extended lore stories, like Cyrus versus Tiber Septim, or Vivek going on these crazy adventures. Instead, it's the Dragonborn literally reforming the Amulet of Kings and seeing the towers and interacting with influential figures and stuff. It's like, that's stuff that I would genuinely read on the Imperial Library if there were actual stories about that, which is cool.
Yeah, it definitely has become complex, and I've always enjoyed protagonist characters that have a touch of destiny about them, rather than just your generic, here's my rolled up hero that is gonna do X, Y, and Z. I like how the story, the main quest kind of centers around that player character's evolution. But yeah, I mean, I think Skyrim, the main gripe I see with people is really just kind of how it was mechanically executed, is that it's treated much more like a hack and slash game than it is a true RPG in the way that it's built. But I think story-wise and, quest and story development-wise, it definitely, I think, meets the mark.
I know, like, people always say, like, Skyrim will eventually be what Morrowind is to a lot of the Elder Scrolls fans, that when Elder Scrolls 6 and hopefully future installments are released. It's just because Skyrim has had a long reign, really influential, too. And when it does eventually become obsolete, people will still cling to it because of just how many experiences they've had with it. Especially lore-wise. Like, that's
there's still people developing mods for Morrowind, so I don't think it will ever really completely die out.
Oh no, never.
I think it'll dwindle, and it'll reach a point where it's just this hardcore niche of people still working with it. But I think it is always going to have a place in the modding community for sure.
It's definitely, it's solidified its legacy, if you will say. Which is funny because
I see what you did there.
Like I'm doing a bad right now. I'm trying to explain my own jokes. But yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. I like how. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, just one step above going.
Yeah, basically, that's my version of S. It's like I'll stutter. I'll like, you see and I'll like start making a freak out noise. Well, yeah, I like that. No, I like how we're gonna see more of Aaron. Because I saw that sword on the desk in his office, and I'm like, that's a cool sword. And I'm like, he must have had so many adventures. I cannot wait to see his story unfold, and you get to work with him on stuff.
It's exciting.
I know, like, to move forward, one of the things I definitely want to talk about is what kind of things can we expect specifically from Odyssey? Like, what new places are you willing to tell us? What objects might we interact with? And what factions, if any, might we interact with during this mod? I know you mentioned Thalmor, you mentioned Arlen, sorry. And I know you mentioned the Crystal Tower. So that's the first act. Is there anything you're willing to? I'm not going to force anything because I know sometimes, this is all what you're willing to share.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, actually, it's the adamantium tower, not crystal tower. The crystal tower is involved in some of the lore and storyline as you go along. But yeah, basically, each act is going to take you to a different place. We're definitely focusing on more rich and more highly populated, more densely decorated, more detailed environments and much deeper storylines, but on a smaller geographic scale. So rather than doing all of Hammerfell, for example, we'll just be doing the region that kind of encompasses where Orcrest partially was, and the Fang Lair, and where Dragonstar is going to be kind of the central hub for that act. And with Act 3, which is going to take place in Morrowind, is going to kind of focus mainly around the crater of where Vivek City used to be, the Scathing Sea. And
Yeah, I was
then,
going to say the Vivek cantons and everything, they're all gone because of Bardar.
yeah, exactly. So just kind of around that little region, and then up into Red Mountain itself is all we're doing there. So yeah, I mean, you'll be able to see, massive amounts of kind of backdrop scenery, but there'll be a much more defined kind of scenic area that you'll be interacting with than in a lot of the places. We're planning on going to Valenwood, to Elsewhere, to Black Marsh. We'll be doing Hammerfell, like I mentioned. It's Balfiera and the Adamantium Tower is going to be kind of the central hub, and you'll be working with the Durrani clan, kind of central there through a lot of it. Let's see, what else have I missed? You'll be coming back to Skyrim for part of it. I think that about covers it, other than our Act 2 location, which is kind of spoilery, so I won't go into that.
Gotcha. I know, and this was that kind of led into the next question, which I find very nice. I liked. Good job, past me. You organized these questions very well. The fourth question is, and I have to give a little context, because the only reason I even really discovered this mod, to be honest with you, after I did a bunch of research for the review, which you also were interested in, I shared that with you, and I was very happy to see you comment on it and everything. But in doing research for that review, and also just me trying to mod my game more than I play it half the time, I discovered that Beyond Skyrim is not compatible currently. At least Beyond Skyrim Bruma is not currently compatible with Legacy of the Dragonborn. And I looked into that, and I discovered this mod project through that. So I'm assuming we might also be going to Cyrodiil, right? Eventually.
Actually, no. They have someone has developed a pretty extensive patch for
Yeah, I
Legacy,
have that right now.
and it, I think, hits all of the points that are needed for compatibility. The main reason we kind of didn't want to do a actually endorsed official patch for Bruma was just to kind of curb expectations, because we're not going to Cyrodiil, so it's totally going to be, lore wise, it'll be compatible just fine, but all of the other stuff in the future moving forward, it won't make sense to run, the Iliac Bay Beyond Skyrim group with
Yeah, the three
alongside
caves and
Act
all that
1.
stuff.
Yeah, just because we're basically going to be, doing our own renditions of the same locations. So mechanically, it'll still be compatible, assuming your system can handle running,
70 mods, yeah.
8 to 15, new land mods. That's enormous.
Oh, don't worry. My game crashes all the time. Not really. I've got it under wraps somehow, but I always have to start a new game when I install something new. But the reason I had to bring that up was because the next one was, how does it compare to something like Beyond Skyrim? And I think you've kind of already explained that. You said it's not a new land. So you're going to new lands. You're going on adventures there, but you're not getting the entire province, is what you're saying.
Right. Yeah, you're just going to get, regions of a province that are about the size of a Skyrim hold or two, basically.
Which is good. It's pretty interesting, actually.
It's a good, good sizable space, but we wanted to focus more on storytelling, more on environmental storytelling, and more on, details of the setting that you're in. And Beyond Skyrim tends to focus on more the mass scale of representing the full space that's there, and they're slowly developing content for it. And this way we're taking basically the opposite approach, is that we're pre-planning our content and executing it and in a smaller fashion as we go, and expanding it out as we need to.
You're going for a quality over quantity approach, which is always a very
Exactly.
nice thing to see when it comes to major projects.
Yep, definitely. And then it also makes sure that we're not going to get ourselves outside the scope of our ability to actually handle making happen. Because if we plan to do a whole province, then each act will take us a year or two to do.
Hmm. I know, like, so you've already, interesting enough, this was not a question, but I will point it out. So beyond Skyrim, Cyrodiil will most likely be compatible with Odyssey, or not? Yeah, Odyssey and Legacy is what I mean to say. So that's actually really cool to note, because Cyrodiil is one of my favorite provinces, mostly because of Oblivion. And that was one of the questions I meant to ask you earlier. Is, did I not save it? No, I didn't save it. Crap. I meant to ask you what was your favorite Elder Scrolls game earlier, actually.
I'm pretty partial to Morrowind in a lot of ways as far as the story and setting goes. I have a certain degree of nostalgia with it, but I've been playing them ever since Arena first came out. And
Oh, really?
yeah, so I definitely have soft spots for all the elements. The one I probably played the most was Oblivion for sure.
Same. I love Oblivion.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's like different flavors of ice cream. I can't nail down just one favorite. I can tell you why certain ones are better than others in certain instances, and the same thing's kind of true with episodes of Elder Scrolls. But I think the more modern iterations definitely are better than Arena and Daggerfall.
Yeah, as someone who had to play, and this is speaking from my own experience, as someone who's had to play all of them, and I actually plan on still going back. I told you in the beginning, I was like, my YouTube channel, I started with doing this one series, which I broke down every Elder Scrolls game, never finished it. In fact, was very disappointed in the second episode I did on Daggerfall. So I'm thinking of revisiting it, but splitting up one game into like multiple episodes. So going through Arena and going over the lore, then going over the gameplay, then going over the history, those being three separate things.
Well,
But
it's also really difficult though, because the lore between Arena and Daggerfall, that transition from that into Morrowind, there was a major retcon in a lot of the lore.
oh, trust
So,
me, I know. I
so
have done
there's
many like
yeah,
nights just worth of research on that between
yeah.
Michael
So
Kirkbride and Ted Peterson.
exactly, yeah. We've done a little bit of adopting of kind of the old school stuff from Daggerfall as far as some major plot points and milestones go, and then of course keeping true to what's currently canon.
Yeah, I know. Like you said earlier, every Elder Scrolls game has its fans, and that's one of the reasons I try not to get too involved with the fandom too much, because they can be pretty. Every fandom's toxic, but the Elder Scrolls ones are always bickering about Morrowind's the best, no, Oblivion's the best, no, Skyrim is, and then there's a couple of the people that are like, no, Daggerfall's the best, and I'm like, okay, I think they're all great in their own wonderful way, guys. Like, because I
Yeah,
played them all. They're except for Battlespire. It's the only one I haven't played so far, but they're all
yeah. That
wonderful.
that one I couldn't get working on my old computer back in the day, and so I do have a copy of it now, but I just read back on the lore of it instead of playing through it.
Oh,
I
don't
was like,
feel bad.
okay,
It's one of
that's
the
good
few
enough
that's
for me.
pretty linear.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I just got a physical copy of Redguard and got the physical copy of the first edition of the Pocket Guide to the Empire.
hmm
And I was like, this stuff is awesome. Like, there's different reasons to love each game. I know Redguard's lore. I know Oblivion is like the feeling and the music. Skyrim's the setting and the lore. Morrowind's the main story and the lore. Daggerfall's the role playability, and Arena's just respect for starting everything. And then there's Battlespire, which I've never played, so I can't talk about.
hmm
And ESO
Um,
for just trying to be something
yeah,
supplementary.
yeah. ESO is a tricky one for us because they are retconning a lot of things and filling in a lot of holes, and there's always been some dispute on how canonical it's supposed to be taken. And so we kind of are taking a pick and choose approach to that, where the large events, as long as they don't interfere with the flagship mod canon that's already been established, which we're using, then we'll generally accept it and adopt it into the Odyssey lore.
I like that this mod basically could be seen as like its own, like it's its own. How do I put it? Everybody's playthrough of their versions of their games is technically their own headcanon, which means their own story, but in some way, people like Michael Kirkbride like to try and like hint at the idea that that's still canon.
Right.
It's just your universe, which is cool.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, to
Definitely.
move on, because I meant to ask that question earlier, actually. That was supposed to be part of the first half, so that's my bad for doing that. And sorry also, because I don't know what's going on with my nose, but my nose is running, so you're going to hear a lot throughout the whole thing.
You can edit those out later, yeah.
I'll do my best to, because luckily your audio and my audio are separate, so I should be able to clip out.
Oh, nice.
Which should be good. So we've already answered what kinds of things. We already answered how does the mod compare to Beyond Skyrim. And now the next one is, how did you get the idea to make Odyssey? I'm actually very curious about this one.
I don't remember.
Oh, that's very anticlimactic. But
honestly, Odyssey has been in development in the back of my head for a very long time. Before our big team kind of started coming together and doing major development about a year and a half ago, I had been working with two other developers to kind of cobble it together over the course of about 4 years. Prior to that, this kind of came about pretty early, actually, in Legacy's development.
Wow, really?
Just kind of in concept. And it has taken massive evolutionary changes and shifts in kind of the premise and storyline. It still kind of has the same basic core to it, but it has definitely changed quite a bit in how we have been, kind of polishing it and shaping it since that point.
That's awesome. It reminds me of, like I mentioned earlier, I have a copy of Redguard. Reading the Pocket Guide to the Empire, you see stuff that is like brought up in Skyrim, but was like made in concept like 15 years before it was ever even a game, which is cool.
Yeah, and so we kind of are one of the major reasons for going ahead and making the version 5 of Legacy and doing the revisions that we did, especially with the Shattered Legacy main quest, was to basically conform the lore of Legacy to support what we're going to be doing in Odyssey, to make some of the shadier elements and more fuzzy elements make more sense, and to also, mechanically, functionally make it, snap together like a Lego with Odyssey as you go forward. So yeah, we basically did our own kind of little retcon to version 5 of Legacy.
There's nothing wrong with that. I like the way you guys approach the lore. You actually helped me understand some stuff between like Akatosh and Lorcan, the way Aaron explains it. And I'm like, like the way he tells it, like I wish that there were documents that were literally just how he says it, because he says it in such a way that you get it. It's like, oh, that makes more sense. Like I've been trying to figure out the connection between Akatosh and Lorcan so much that I want to make a video on it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I did a lot of research into that in particular during version 5's development, and just kind of found a lot of pieces of the puzzle that really support the concept that Akatosh and Lorcan are kind of two sides of the same coin, basically.
Which is interesting because they're both like technically supposed to be opposites in the lore. They were both made for the exact... One was literally made to spite the other, technically, which is interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And so, well, I mean, when you look at it, Akatosh is actually a man-made god. He didn't exist. He only exists because he's the god of time. And when he was created by the Murakati Selective during the Middle Dawn...
during the big dragon break that took 1,000 years, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the crux of that. He's basically this bastardization, this
of Ariel
welded concept of merging Akka with Shor, with Shazar, or is it with Shar? I forget which one it was.
No, well, they're the same. Shazar is the
Yeah.
Cyrodiilic pantheon,
Yeah.
where Shor was the Nordic.
Yeah, sure.
Which is all. You know what? You might have just helped me figure out a whole bunch of stuff right there. I might have to give you credit in my video talking about that in the future. But thank you for that. Actually, you've definitely helped me there.
So yeah, basically he's a political god. He was brought about in order to merge, the Alessian order and appease the Nords by essentially getting rid of the Ariel aspect and bringing in the Shore aspect instead.
Yeah, which is cool. I like that.
Yeah,
that's what makes lore so interesting, is how much crazy.
Yeah, it's got a lot of really crazy metaphysical elements behind it.
A lot of like that's a lot of like the stuff behind the MKs. He likes to inject a lot of political, racial, and stuff, but make it in a light in which people think about it a different way. I like that.
Yeah, the lore is very fluid. You can find a way to justify just about any storytelling device, and it will connect somewhere with the established lore that makes it feel like it actually works, which is what I'm really happy about with it.
So, okay, this is the next question, and I know like you've kind of already answered it, but just to like put it on record, the question is just to get an estimate. How long do you think it will be until we get an early build of the mod for release? Which I know you said will be an act, so technically apply it in the way of like when will be the earliest version that we could get of Act 1 in the future, possibly.
We're hoping sometime next year.
Yeah, so 2021, 2022.
The major holdup with us has just kind of been that we're kind of laying the foundation for everything for the future acts as well, because we have over 180 NPC, generic NPC voice line setups, and each generic NPC essentially has about 300 lines. And so we're basically laying out all those pieces and having them ready to go so that we can just snap them in future acts. So this first act is definitely on the long end of the timetable, whereas future acts I fully anticipate we'll be able to knock those out a lot faster. But we're tentatively optimistic for next year during 2021.
I just say I wrote down. I'm like, I wanted to ask like maybe sometime 2021, 2022, but I was like, that might be too presumptuous to just assume it might be done next year, and because that's the big thing when people like look at Oblivion or they look at Beyond Skyrim or they look at big projects, and yours is definitely one of those big projects. People like to assume, oh, it's a mod, it'll be out next year, and then they don't realize how much work goes into it. It's basically its own game at that point. Almost.
It really is. It really is in a lot of ways. And I mean, I would try and under promise, over deliver. So if we end up releasing a beta 6 months ahead of what we anticipated, then that's awesome. But releasing it 6 months later is kind of letting the air out of the tires. So I'd like to not define specific deadlines for things until we can actually see at the end of the tunnel where it's coming out.
But I say I have a bad habit of doing that. We're like, oh, I'm going to do this video next, or oh, I think about this video next, and then it just things never shape out the way you say it. So I've gotten into the habit of not saying it. Yeah, it's like don't make promises. Never make promises, because you will go back and kick yourself for it.
Yeah, that's one thing I've really learned working through Legacy is to never define a deadline.
Yeah, exactly. So I think now we're on to the last question I have for you, which is it's more of a simple question. It's where can people go to support your work financially, critically, or by offering assistance for helping develop the mod or anything like that?
Yeah, well, of course, the mod page is a good place to start. We have links to our Discord community, icecreamassassin mods, and there's also links to the Odyssey, the Dragonborn development server, that people can kind of keep tabs on where everything is. And then we also have a Patreon that helps support the whole lead development team on Odyssey, as well as myself. And those are also linked on the mod page on Nexus. Those are kind of the main places.
I will definitely be linking for those of you who are watching and have watched up to this point, because I know it's been an hour and a half, and a lot of people drop off at that point. But it's still, I want to point out, I will be linking not only the mod page to the mods we've talked about, I will also be linking his Patreon here in the description, and I will also do my best to get all of the forums and all of the Discord pages I can. I will try to compile them as best as I can and put them in the description so you guys can find them easily. Yeah, I mean, like, that pretty much, like, wraps up all of my questions. I'll be honest with you, I was not expecting to get to sit down with you and actually ask you some questions and stuff. That was really cool of you to offer to do that.
Yeah, no worries. I'm always happy to sit down and chat about it. It tends to help get the creative juices flowing again as well.
Yeah, nice inspiration, nice motivation. I know how that feels. It's kind of cool.
Plus the hype's always nice.
Of course, I found your mod and I was like, I'm gonna review it, and I like messaged you offhandedly, and I was like, I've always gotten responses from people, but it's always been smaller mods, and half the time the bigger ones I've tried to review, like Carved Brink or something like that, they will respond, but they're always like, they're clearly trying to, like, they'll be like, yeah, this is just some random dude on the internet, so like they don't really want to take the time with it. But you actually took the time, and I gotta say, I was very happy to find that. I was like, you're a really cool person. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate that.
Of course. So, like I said, this pretty much wraps up everything. Thank you so much, Ice Cream, for answering all my questions. I hope that we get to see more stuff soon from you. Hopefully in the next year, like you said, we'll hopefully get the Odyssey, the first version of the Act 1. And from that point onward, we'll see just how much more of story you've got in store for us, really.
Yeah, sounds great.
Alright, well, thank you everybody for watching. This has been Infinity, bringing you this video today. I hope all of you out there have a nice day, night, or evening, wherever and whenever you're at. And please say it with me now. Go out there, strive to break Infinity, and take it easy, guys.